The Odyssey, an introduction to the genre, the author, Greek culture, and the Trojan War. Let's begin with Greek mythology. Mythology is a story written to answer the big questions in life, like who we are and where we came from. Mythology includes divine intervention of gods and goddesses that determine the fate of humans, and classic Homeric heroes with great heroic deeds and supernatural powers. In the ancient times, myths explained things we now understand through science, like the movement of the stars. Oral traditions. In ancient Greece, stories were told by one person to another. Details changed with each telling, and the stories were passed through many, many generations. Eventually, myths were written down in the 4th century BC with the invention of writing. Many Greek myths we know today were first recorded by poets like Homer and Hesiod in 8th century BC, memorized and passed down through oral tradition. Epic poems. Epic poetry is a long narrative poem on a serious subject. It is formal, elevated in style. Epic poetry centers on heroic characters whose actions determine the fate of a group, a nation, and/or humankind. Action is heroic deeds in battle, long, arduous journeys or quests. Gods and other supernatural beings take an interest and an active role in human affairs. Homer, the author of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Homer was a Greek poet. He composed his oral poetry in 800 BC. It was later written down around 450 BC. Homer was blind. Homer was a bard, or a singing performer. He used rhyme and meter in his epic poetry, often accompanied by a large stick to beat and keep time. The Greeks called him a rhapsody, one of the original words for our rappers today. The years he actually lived are unknown, but most likely in 8th century BC. Homer was one of the first Greek philosophers, and he challenged the Greeks' belief of fate at the hands of the gods. He wrote the Odyssey as an example of self-determination. Self-determination is a man's choice, determines his path, and is not the consequences or fault of the gods. Facts to know about the Odyssey. Homer composed the epic poem about 800 BC. The Odyssey is an epic poem about the Greek hero Odysseus and his 10-year adventure trying to get home after the Trojan War. The themes of the Odyssey are a desire for home, a balanced man, self-determination versus fate. The Odyssey was originally performed as oral entertainment at banquets honoring men. The craft and style of the Odyssey. Homer used recurring epithets. Epithets are catchy tags attached to characters, such as gray-eyed Athena, swift-footed Achilles. Homer used epic similes, lengthy comparisons of characters and events to opposing things such as animals or occurrences. He often described Hermes with long epic similes of a seagull. He described the broken boat of Odysseus as straw in the wind, and he compared Odysseus's hands to that of an octopus's tentacles. Some of the main characters in the Odyssey are Odysseus, his son Telemachus, his wife Penelope, the goddess Athena, the suitors, Poseidon the sea god, and the servants of Odysseus.
Welcome to the video study guide for Homer's Odyssey. Introduction. If you haven't read the Odyssey, relax because you already know the story, or at least some of it. Ever hear of a cyclops or a one-eyed giant? Ever hear the police song wrapped around your finger when Sting sings about being caught between Scylla and Charybdis? Ever see the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? All those references and many more come from the Odyssey, an epic poem that is one of the world's oldest and greatest works of literature. It tells the story of Odysseus, one of the heroes of the Trojan War. Odysseus fought long and hard and helped win the war after 10 years of battle. All he wants now is to go home to his family in Ithaca. However, along the way, he angers the gods, and they make him take the long way home. The very long way, because it takes him 10 more years to actually get there. Odysseus' ships get wrecked by storms, his crew gets changed into pigs by a sorceress, and he has to trick one-eyed giants and test himself against countless temptations, ranging from magical songs to magically seductive women. And sometimes he fails, particularly with the women. Hey, this is a man's story after all. But it's also the story of a mature man, a married man who really does want to get back to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. They've been waiting for him in Ithaca, but they haven't exactly been safe. Lots of suitors have been hanging around wanting to marry Penelope, and she is just barely keeping them at arm's length. Telemachus had to grow up without his dad, and since the other heroes of the Trojan War came home a long time ago, Telemachus has to wonder if Odysseus is, say it softly, dead. Penelope doesn't think so. She keeps waiting for him, becoming a symbol of loyalty that has lasted almost 3,000 years. In the end, of course, Mom is right. Dad finally makes it back, kicks some serious suitor butt, and cleans house. Along the way, one of the greatest heroes of all time has some of the world's greatest adventures.
Additionally, we will learn of ancient Greek values in the Odyssey. One is cleverness and the wit of an individual. Odysseus is an example of cleverness and wit. Faithfulness and loyalty, exemplified by Penelope, and the physical strength, exemplified by other heroes such as Achilles and Agamemnon. Some of the pastimes of ancient Greece were dancing, singing, storytelling, Olympic games, and competitions. An important aspect of the culture of Greece is hospitality. Hospitality is the treatment of guests or strangers in your land. The Greeks gave strangers food, warmth, shelter, and comfort. Good hosts listened to their guests and treated them with respect. In ancient Greece, religion and beliefs were very important. Zeus and other Olympian gods often decided the fate of humans. The gods' wills could be turned with appropriate sacrifices. Praying to the gods would fulfill all wishes. Life after death occurred in the underworld of Hades, and the Greeks believed in prophecies, omens, and oracles. The beliefs of the ancient Greeks. Homer's work began a shift in beliefs to something more optimistic, that justice would emerge in the end, good does triumph over evil, persistence and determination leads to success, and that heroes are not only determined by battle, but by the journey of change, determination, and strength of character that emerges after a trial.
Odyssey is about Odysseus' journey home after the Trojan War. Odysseus is a Greek. He's the king of Ithaca, and before the start of the poem, he and the other Greeks laid siege to the city of Troy, located in what's now northwestern Turkey. The war lasted for 10 years. After the Greeks defeated the Trojans, Odysseus and his men got back in their ships and started their trip home to Ithaca, a rocky little island off the Greek mainland, where Odysseus' wife and son are waiting for him. Along the way, they run into several dangerous obstacles, and all of Odysseus' men die. Odysseus survives because of his intelligence and cunning, the qualities he's renowned for, and he eventually makes it home, but the journey takes him 10 years. The story breaks roughly into 3 parts. The first part doesn't really even involve Odysseus. It's more about what's going on in Ithaca with his wife and son while he's gone. In the second part, we learn what happened to Odysseus in the 8 years since he left Troy. And in the final part, we finally see Odysseus return home. The poem opens with 2 gods, Zeus and Athena, discussing Odysseus' fate. Odysseus is stuck on an island in the middle of the sea, in the house of a nymph named Calypso. Calypso won't let Odysseus leave, but even if he could leave, the god Poseidon keeps sending Odysseus off course as he tries to make it home. Poseidon is mad at Odysseus, because Odysseus blinded his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. Athena says if Zeus and all the other gods agree Odysseus should be allowed to leave, then Poseidon can't really argue, since he's outnumbered. They should dispatch Hermes to tell Calypso to let Odysseus go, and in the meantime, she'll go visit Odysseus' son, Telemachus. Disguised as a man, Athena goes to Odysseus' home in Ithaca. Telemachus thinks she's just a stranger at first, and invites her in for some food and wine, though he figures out after a little while that the stranger is really Athena. He laments that he'll never see his father, and complains about all the nobles from nearby islands who are courting his mother, since everyone assumes Odysseus is dead. His mother, Penelope, doesn't want to marry someone else, but she doesn't want to tell her suitors to leave either, so they just hang around Odysseus' house all day and eat all the food. Athena prophesies that Odysseus will soon return, and she counsels Telemachus to round up all the suitors in the morning and order them to leave. Then he should get a ship ready, and visit King Nestor in Pylos and King Menelaus in Sparta. If he hears from one of them that Odysseus is alive, he should wait another year for Odysseus to return. But if he learns Odysseus is dead, he should make a grave for him and give his mother to one of the suitors. Telemachus calls an assembly like Athena suggested. He gets up and says that not only has he lost his father, but now these suitors are eating all his family's food and drinking all the wine. One of the suitors, Antinous, says Telemachus has no right to be upset. It's Penelope who's to blame. She's been leading the suitors on for almost 4 years, saying she'll choose one to marry as soon as she finishes weaving a burial shroud for Odysseus' father, Laertes. She weaves the shroud each day, but at night she unravels her work, and the suitors found out. Telemachus says he'll never force his mother to choose a husband and leave their house. He announces his plan to see what news he can find of Odysseus in Sparta and Pylos. Athena helps him get a ship and crew together, and she disguises herself as an old friend of Odysseus's, named Mentor. When they arrive at Pylos, they meet King Nestor, who fought at Troy with Odysseus. Nestor says he hasn't seen or heard from Odysseus since just after they left Troy,